Hello, and welcome to Melee Stats Deep Dives, episode 20. We're here after one of the craziest Melee majors of the year, I would say, Super Smash Con 2019. And you know what? If you were to watch top 8 of that tournament, you would have seen all the normal faces. You would have seen Leffen, you would have seen Hungrybox. And at 4th place, you would have seen someone who you might not have seen in a little bit. You would have seen lloD, one of the best Peach players.
That's me.
That's him. For the most part of the year, a little bit inactive compared to kind of a really strong year last year. But yeah, definitely proved to everyone that he's still around, and I got him on the show. Hey, how you doing, lloD?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty well. You know, I really appreciate you being on the show. To my knowledge, you've never been on Analog, correct?
I have not been on analog,
So
to my brother's dismay.
thank you for picking me over your brother.
Oh, any day. Any day.
I know there's a little bit of a rivalry going on with Analog and Melee Stats, but I'll extend an olive branch. Zane and Rishi, if you want to have my brother on, he doesn't know Melee. I think he knows who Mango is.
Well, neither does analog, so it wouldn't make much of a difference.
Oh, you know, I got myself into, I wouldn't say hot water, but there's a funny story of me meeting Zane Ipengu for the first time in real life. And it was at a Smash GG after party at Evo, and he went up to me and said, "Hey, how's it going?" And I said, "Don't talk to me." And then, like,
I don't know if it was that intense of a rivalry.
Well, he was like, "Oh, sorry, you know, we're in a couple different Discord servers. Like, we've had friendly conversations online." I was like, "No, it's just like we're podcast rivals. We got to play it up."
At least in public.
Yeah, and I don't think since then he's been comfortable around me since But it's not about whether or not who's comfortable around me, because we're talking about SmashCon this week. So one of the
definitely an uncomfortable bracket.
Definitely an uncomfortable bracket. I would say the most uncomfortable person in the entire event was probably Axe.
Oh yeah.
So he had a really crazy bracket. His obviously, as people know, you know, he lost in round 2 pools to Pudgy Panda, who's a New Jersey Ice Climbers player. But his bracket was super tough. We talked about it on our preview episode for Super Smash Con that we had last week. Mm-hmm. If he beat Pudgy Panda, he most likely had the winner of Boyd Nintendude, and then most likely had Chudat. It was an incredibly tough bracket for him, and we did see him kind of fall a little earlier than expected. So what do you think of that, lloD? So coming into 2019, obviously Axe was a top 10 player, and then we've seen his really great rise. What does this say about Axe right now? What do we think about him as like a top 5, top 3 player? Does this change your opinion at all on him?
So it's a little bit tough because a lot of his success in the past few gigantic tournaments, he didn't run into any of his demons. Like, in the past, whenever he ran into Armada or H-Box, it was just kind of like a brick wall that he couldn't really ever surpass.
Yeah, for sure.
And we saw him succeed when he doesn't run into his demons, as in he can beat pretty much everybody else. But what happens when he runs into either those players, or in this case, matchups that he just can't really get through? So going into SmashCon, so I knew that Axe was potentially in my pathway to make it a top 8. So I was kind of a bit invested into seeing who his matchups were to see if there was a chance he'd be upset. And then I saw that there were like 3 Ice Climbers. And at first I was like, Axe could probably pull through just because he's what, number 3 in the world right now?
Yeah.
But like as time went on, more and more people were like, yeah, we see you're projected to play Axe, but he also has to make it through those Ice Climbers. And I think by the time SmashCon came around, everyone was kind of on the boat that like he wouldn't be able to beat all of them, if any of them.
Yeah,
just because of how terrible the matchup is.
No, you're right, and you're right about him dodging a lot of matchups that maybe aren't favorable to him. We've only seen him versus HBox once this year, which was a pretty close set at Genesis, but I don't know how that would be if they played at each major. And we've talked on the show before about how Armada retiring has just opened the door for so many different people.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about that. I would have been really interested to see you versus Axe. I remember this was 2 podcasts ago. This was on the pre Melee Stats Deep Dives show, which was the Smash History podcast. I called you. It was getting 9th at Smash and Splash 3 or something where in those days that was a crazy call. I think in it.
Yeah, and like
Yeah, I said that
I
you were
think that was
gonna.
the last time I played Axe. Actually, was that long
Yeah,
ago?
that was game
Um,
5, right?
Game 5. It was last dog. He definitely he readapted by game 5
Mm-hmm.
because I think the couple games before that I had kind of beat him solidly, but then game 5 all of a sudden he changed everything up and uh, gave a very definitive win to culminate the set. But that was a long time ago, and if it was that close back then, and considering how much better I've gotten now, I think I would put a better fight against him. But uh,
Yeah,
yeah, Pikachu definitely runs into very troublesome matchups,
yeah,
as
we've
we could see
seen.
by this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely seen it this weekend. Obviously, Ice Climbers is something that has given Axe trouble. In years past, we've seen Axe have trouble with characters that, Peach is something that we've said. We've seen him
Hmm.
have trouble with Jigglypuff as well to a certain extent. I don't think he's
Yeah,
ever had a really bad Jigglypuff loss compared to, was it SmashCon 2016 where he lost to Mafia?
right.
We haven't seen like a really loss to Jigglypuff in that level, but we've seen really close sets with like Prince Abu and other
Hmm.
people around like that. I think 42nd had a close set as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see going into the next couple majors. We only have a few majors left this year, but it'll be interesting to see, does Axe get a bracket that favors him like he has been having these past couple tournaments, or does he get something that's closer to SmashCon? Um,
Right.
but
Yeah, and again with Armada gone,
with Armada gone, yeah,
now he has like half as many demons in his bracket, right?
yeah. It's just like if you are able to avoid Armada because he's not in the tournament, then it's just like up to bracket luck at that point. We talked about in the past how having to dodge both HBox and Armada was such a bane for so many different players because
Hmm.
there was rarely a time where they were both on the same side of the bracket.
Right.
And right now, if you're going to say that HBox is that demon to some of these lower tier characters, some of these mid tier characters, um, then it's just like does he lose to an IBDW or does he lose to Zane or something like that? There are
Hmm.
possible brackets where they might get to winners finals, grand finals without ever playing HBox.
Right. And then now that Axe is third seed, given the most top 50 rankings, and HBox is first seed, if they're both at the same tournament, there's like no possible way they'd be on the same side of bracket.
Yeah,
Since Axe is either going to be second or third seed if Wizzy is there, and assuming we're not taking Leffen's results into account. And so there's no chance they'd play each other until winners finals.
until winners finals. But I would say, speaking about that, is that we have to look at Axe's results recently. Is this the result
Right.
of a top 3 player?
Yeah, I don't know.
13th at a major is not bad. I mean, we've seen that from top players, but like
Uh, just
these
at number 3 in the world, right?
number,
Normally all the top 6, normally the gods are so consistent.
yeah. So it's a new era of Melee. It'll be interesting to see whether or not he's going to be able to continue to play at this level, or if there are
Mhm.
going to be bracket demons. And speaking of top 10 players who underperformed a little bit to a certain extent, we
Mhm.
saw fan favorite Amsa. He
Yeah.
he got
Oops.
upset a little earlier in bracket by I don't know, some
Uh,
old guy, some guy who's been complaining a little bit,
Retired,
some
unranked, trash.
some unranked player. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I think that this was something that might be surprising to people who maybe haven't paid attention to Melee a ton, but I think this was a result that wasn't incredibly surprising to a lot of the people who've been knowledgeable about Melee for a couple of years or been paying attention to you or
Mhm.
any of that kind of matchup. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you prepared for the AMSA matchup or how you
Yeah,
went
sure.
into it?
So preparation wise, it's interesting because so contrary to common belief, I actually don't get that much Yoshi practice. There is a Yoshi player in MDVA, but I don't live in MDVA anymore, and so I don't necessarily get the strict practice in the matchup anymore. My advantage, though, is I actually do kind of play Yoshi myself, which most other people have no idea how to play Yoshi or any of the inner workings of the character. But
Yeah,
I put a decent amount of time into at least understanding the character because I just think Yoshi is so much fun to play. So I've had a chance to kind of like theory craft that matchup a lot in the past just because I play both characters and it's kind of fun for me to think about how their move sets interact with each other If anything, I've played as my Yoshi against other people's peaches a lot, so I know it from the other way around too. But it wasn't really something I had a chance to like practice until this past weekend when I found out I was going to play Amsa, and so I tracked down my Yoshi playing friend, and we sat down for like 2.5 hours just playing the matchup over and over and over again. So it really gave me a chance to play around with some of the ideas I had, see which ones worked, which ones didn't, what mix-ups and positionings were involved with each of the interactions I was trying to go for, and then hopefully be able to apply them once I played against Amsa, who was like a completely different beast from the Yoshi player I was practicing
Oh
against.
yeah,
No
for
offense to
sure.
him, but like no one moves as fast uh, or as decisively as Amsa does. No one has like the control of Yoshi or the consistency with the inputs. So I just kind of had to hope that from like that brief session I had with my friend beforehand, that I could learn enough about the matchup and apply it against a top 10 player. And fortunately, it did go well because
Yeah.
uh, Yoshi Peach is a matchup with like a ton of neutral interactions every stock, and I think that's one of my strong suits is when those kinds of matchups happen, when you just have neutral interaction over neutral interaction, and you're given a lot of chances to like adapt to your opponent's um, like strange, unique options that they're used to throwing everyone else off. But because I'm playing a matchup that I can see them a lot, I
Yeah.
have a chance to like adapt my own strategy to be able to beat it in the long run.
Well, it definitely showed off. As we had two sets with them, both of which you
Mm-hmm.
won, and I could
Mm-hmm.
definitely see that coming through. Now we have you on record as saying that Yoshi is just better Peach.
Yeah, I do still think that.
Yeah, you still think that? Because I'm just
Yeah, I
saying. I mean,
think
you beat the best Yoshi twice, and then at this
I think
major,
Peach wins the
a
matchup, but I
Peach
think
plays
Yoshi is a better
fourth,
character
Yoshi
overall.
plays fifth.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is unfortunate that Amsa ran into me just because, again, I know a lot more about Yoshi than most people.
Yeah, that is fair.
So I
Uh,
have I have a slight advantage. I was literally telling my brother, it's like, how does anyone beat Amsa without knowing the character as well as I do? Like, doesn't make any sense to me. Just because it's like I have thought so much about the character, and I understand his strengths and weaknesses. I don't really know how anyone else could beat him without that same level of understanding. Just because Amsa is such an incredible player on his own right that it just doesn't make any sense.
yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. I don't know if I've really thought the same way about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably the most interesting thing to happen in your bracket. You had a kind of interesting bracket because, well, I would say everyone at this tournament had an interesting bracket for the most part. I think that the way that the pools were, the how many upsets were happening, I think that
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of really, it was all dependent on luck about how which side you were on and who you had to face. You had
Right.
SFAT in your bracket beforehand, which is I think
Mm-hmm.
is really interesting. You had beaten him before, most notably
Mm-hmm.
at Even Bigger Balk last year, which you ended
Right.
up winning. How would you
Yes.
have felt about playing him, and how did you prepare for that?
So uh, it was kind of tough to prepare. Like the Fox matchup is such a weird one because every Fox player plays so differently from each other that it's hard to prepare for the matchup itself. You kind of have to prepare for the people you're going to play against.
Yeah,
And I knew from playing against SFAT the last time that like he is very he has this really weird like cadence of his neutral game that is kind of hard to get a grasp on unless you play him a few times. Um, and like I last summer at Even Bigger Buck, that was actually the first time I had beaten him because I think he had beaten me the last couple of times. Each time seemed to get closer and closer.
yeah.
But
Wasn't it
Even Bigger Buck,
Holiday Twitch Holiday Bash was
yeah,
man,
that
that
was the
was
first one.
yeah,
And then I think it was 3-1 he beat me. Um, and then second time was CEO last year, actually a week before Even Bigger Balk, where
yeah.
it was like game 5 last stock.
I remember them just getting
And then
closer and
finally Even
closer.
Bigger Balk. Right. Even Bigger Balk, I like barely won game 1. I think he kind of beat me game 2. But then games 3 and 4 were like so far in my favor that it was just kind of seemed like a wash at that point. I think I had like figured out a couple key interactions that led me just blow up a couple stocks, and by that point I was so far ahead that he couldn't really catch up. So I knew that like based on that last set, I had a pretty good shot of beating him again. I know that someone like SFAT, who has a coach like Bobby Siege, would definitely put in a lot of effort in the run back against me. And even my brother was saying that like SFAT was sad that he didn't get a chance to play me because he had a lot of adaptations, a lot of new tricks up
Ah,
his sleeve in the run back.
interesting.
Um, so I would have loved to play him again to see what those tricks were. Um, but as regards to my preparation for him, a lot of it was just like being able to comfortably incorporate a lot of the new tricks that I've been working on in the past like 6 months or so, to hopefully challenge some of his adaptations. Like I've gotten a lot better at uh, placing certain aerials in the air against Fox that I would imagine work well against his kind of play style, because he's a very like position based Fox,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. And the movement tricks that I've been working on would help me challenge his control of space. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, of course. Will it be interesting to see if any future events you might be able to play him? You might be able to play someone of his caliber or another
Right.
um, different player. We also saw you last year at Even Bigger Bell talking about that. We saw you beat S2J.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of haven't really seen that type of matchup from you this year at a larger level.
Mm-hmm.
At Pound, we saw you against La Luna, and we saw
Mm-hmm.
you at this tournament against. You played Polish in the Peach Ditto. You played
Mm-hmm.
Amsa. We really haven't seen you against like a ton of different type of characters and different
Right.
players. So it'll be interesting to
Mm-hmm.
see going forward into 2019 and maybe into 2020. Yeah, like how these adaptations in your playstyle. Like I really am interested to see how they surface against a wider pool of top players. But we'll
Right.
we'll be
I'm
getting
very glad
into
I didn't run into any Falcons or Falcos,
yeah.
because those are two matchups I've kind of neglected in the past like 8 months, and
Oh boy.
to be honest, I look atrocious at them right now. So I'm very glad I wasn't exposed by any of those kind of characters. But in the future, I'll be ready.
In the future, yeah.
I'll show you how to do that.
Well, we'll talk about the future just a little bit. I want to actually get more into this bracket because there's so many interesting things going on. So, someone who is in
Hmm.
your path, actually, Kevin Maples. So that he beat SFAT in pools. That was actually the reason why you didn't get to play
Uh-huh.
SFAT. So I
Right.
know Kevin Maples is from your former region, I guess you would call it. I don't know
Yep.
your sub region, whatever you would
Sub
call it,
region.
MDVA.
My homeland.
Your homeland. That's a good one. So he is an MDVA Fox. I think
Hmm.
like famously in my mind, but maybe not famously on a larger scale. Doesn't go to locals and only attends majors.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah, for the most part, we rarely see him. A lot of it's because he's still in high school,
yeah, he's
and
a youngun.
so yeah, travel wise, I think it's hard for him because he's in high school and he's also kind of far away from like the cave in Xanadu. I think he's like 40-minute drive from cave, and I think he would attend if he had rides or if he could drive himself, but I don't think either of those are possible. So I don't think it's he avoids them; it just doesn't have the opportunity to
Yeah.
go.
I mean, we saw the same thing from another MDVA player. Actually, reminds me of Cool Lime. Cool Lime, another
Yeah,
young kid,
exactly.
attends like a fairly decent number of larger events, but really hasn't been able
Mhm.
to attend a ton of smaller events in region.
Right.
But yeah, Kevin Maples, I
Cool.
think.
I'll say.
Cool
Oh
Lime,
yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, go. Yeah, go on. We're
So
big.
so Cool Lime, admittedly, he does attend a lot of locals, but it's funny because he'll attend locals but then not enter. And we're all convinced it's because he realizes that all of MDVA is so good against Ices that he doesn't want to take any bad losses. But
Yeah,
who knows? I don't know what goes in his mind.
he is the mini Chudat in a sense, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely. He like idolizes Chudat. It's so funny.
One time I asked Chudat on stream, why was I watching Chudat's stream is the question, but I was. And I asked him why is Cool Lime so good. This was like 2 years ago, and he's like, he just
Mhm.
copies everything I do.
Yep, yep, yep.
And I couldn't argue on that one. But yeah, so back to Kevin Maples. He had kind of a little bit of a breakout, I would say. Beating SFAT, definitely his biggest win
Mhm.
so far.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I'll
really.
have to admit, a lot of us didn't find that surprising because Fox did it was, in my opinion, by far his best matchup.
Yeah, looking at all of his tournaments in seeding for this, it's really apparent that he is just the type of player who, whatever tier of player you would say he is, I would say probably right now is like the lower end of the top 100 to outside the top 100, whatever you want to call that
Uh,
huge nebulous tier. He just does really
yep.
well against those type of players.
hmm
Like his local, or
What else? Who else has he played? I know he had a big win last year at Pound Underground, but I'm not sure if he's beaten anyone since then.
yeah, so we talked about it on last week's episode. So let me just see if I can pull up. We had a little list, and
hmm
it's nothing huge, but it's just like an impressive list of never really losing to people below his skill level. Just like
Okay.
really respectable majors. So like he beat the script 2 this year. He beat Vist. He beat
hmm
Dr. Lobster. Beat J
hmm
Bash. All of
hmm
which I think are players who could be in that really nebulous range of like anywhere near top 100.
Right.
He beat Rosin. He beat Mr. F.
hmm
Like just really solid wins. And until
That was
today or this weekend, we really didn't see him have this huge breakout. So
hmm
I think you're right. I don't think it was super surprising, but it's still really cool to see from such a young player, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah, he puts in so much work. He's definitely a net play fiend.
Yeah.
And those young high school players have nothing else to do besides grind tech skill in their rooms for hours a day. So we're not we're not too surprised.
No, for sure. And I believe he's going to shine as well. So that'll be interesting to see whether or not he's able to replicate his performance or, if we might see something else from him.
hmm
Are there any players at this tournament who you want to bring up specifically? Anything that was interesting to you or like any runs or wins or losses?
I think Polish's run was especially cool.
I think that's a great one to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, he's someone who I would be shocked if he's not in the top 100 this upcoming year.
Definitely has a good case.
Yeah. So two of his wins were Ice Climbers mains, and I know it is kind of taboo to bring up matchups into how important and how significant wins are, but you can't really count out his win against Chudat, especially since it was a 2-0. And Chu is probably, I would say, one of the best ices against Peach. So that's definitely a
Oh,
great
for
win for
sure.
Polish. And then beating KJH 2-0 is another fantastic win because KJH doesn't think he's good versus Peach, but I mean, I haven't beaten him in like a year and a half. So whatever that means. And then Polish beat Nintendo to make it in the top 16.
Yeah.
So three fantastic wins.
Nintendo, a player who he kind of has, I wouldn't say dropped off because he's taken like a little bit of a break, and at
Mm-hmm.
locals he's only gone Marth.
Right.
But regardless, like every time he goes to a major at this and at Genesis, he's had really good performances. So
Yeah.
people
And
may
crazy that he did so well at SmashCon since he was like
he's
running the
yeah
event.
he's TOing it. Yeah, I feel like he's always had a history of being involved with the tournament and still doing really well.
Still doing well, yeah.
But yeah, I think Polish. That's a good thing to bring up his Nintendo win because while some people might think that Nintendo's fallen off, it's
Mm-hmm.
really just him
Nintendo's
taking a bit of a break, and
right.
his performances are still good. That's a still respectable win.
Absolutely. And once Nintendo's Marth is on par with his Ices, he'll be unstoppable. I mean, I played as Marth. I haven't played it in a while. I think like a year and a half, maybe. But a year and a half, he was giving me trouble. So I can't even imagine how tough it is now. Nintendo is known for being really good at the Ices Ditto, though, as you can see by beating Boyd and Pudgy Panda.
Yeah,
Did he go Ices against them? I actually don't think I asked anyone.
I was not able to see if that was on stream, so I actually don't
Let
know
me
if that
try.
was the case. I know that he is. You're right. He is very good in the Icy Ditto. I know that Boyd is. That's kind of one of the things that I would say is a little shakier for him.
Right.
Was
I
it?
remember Boyd lost to one of our MDVA low tier ICs players like a year ago.
Yeah, he lost
So
to Cool Lime earlier this year at Fight Pit.
Cool M too, yeah.
So I mean, Cool Lime's obviously a respectable loss now,
Right.
but
I think he lost to who was it? I can't remember his name. Someone from NVA. One of like the non-national level ICs players from there. I'll have to get back to you on that.
you've got a lot of ices around there. Was it like
Oh, we have
Frostbite
so
or
many.
something, or
Not Frostbite.
is Donut
Oh,
Games? Is
oh
he
my god.
MDVA?
Donut games, but like even worse than donut games.
Oh
That's the
wow.
weird part.
Well,
Hold
I'm
on,
interested to
hold
see
on.
what this is.
This was at like might have been Smash Valley last year. Oh my god, what's his name? This is gonna drive me crazy.
Well, how about this?
Okay, keep
Let's
talking.
yeah.
I'll find it.
Tell me whenever you find out because I'm interested to hear. I'm sure the viewers are interested to hear. Polish is definitely a good player to pick out. you're right on the money when you say he should be a top 100 player. I'm going to pick out some people who I think are right around the top 100 level who did a little
Mhm.
well here. The first person who comes to mind um, is Sunsei. So Sunsei is a player who we've called him like the Game 5 master, like going to Game 5 with none, going to Game 5. Like,
Uh-huh.
just it's one of those things where it's like every time he plays one of these good players, he always takes him to Game 5. So he's
Right.
on Fox from Canada, I believe
Uh-huh.
Ontario. And I think this is his best performance out of region. He beat Kid Boogie, which, hard to say what that means in 2019,
Yeah.
but like still solid. And he ended up beating the real thing, who
Right.
beat Toussaint to get there.
Yeah.
So like losing to
Yeah, I definitely heard,
he actually lost to
I
your brother
hadn't
here.
heard about Yeah, yeah. I hadn't heard about Sunsei until this tournament, but all of a sudden this tournament, I kept hearing his name thrown around. I was like, "Oh, man, I gotta keep track of another person." This guy definitely had a good record this weekend.
Yeah, right. It's so hard to keep track of everyone. So he is definitely a person who I think, if we see him at a big house, if we see him at another um, large event,
Mhm.
definitely could make a breakout performance. Definitely could end up being someone who we see in the top 100.
Yeah. Yeah, if
Pudgy
he keeps up
Panda,
this
actually,
rate.
yeah, yeah. I want to talk about Pudgy Panda.
Sure.
We talked about his big win here. Like, what do you think about him as a top 100 player? Do you think that's enough? Like,
Ye So this reminds me of Flipsy's win on Mango last
yes,
year, because like one common question you hear is beating a top 6 player once good enough to get you on top 100 if you meet the eligibility requirements? So I do think Flipsy had a win on Mango, but he also had like a few other wins on like the lower end of the top 100 last year, and so
yeah.
his placement in the top 100 was a little bit more justified. But as Pudgy Panda, does he have any other top 100 wins? Because I saw he beat Axe, but then I think he
So
didn't beat anyone else
I think he immediately
notable.
lost two Ice Climber Dittos. I think it was
Right.
I forget if
One
it
was
was
Nintendude. It
yeah
was Nintendude and Chew.
yeah I think that was it. Um,
Yeah.
so it's tough because we talked about how Nintendo is good, the Ditto. I'd say probably right now Chew is the best. So
Right.
definitely
Oh, you think so? Yeah, it's definitely between the two of them.
yeah.
Makes sense since they they grew up playing each other every single week.
Yeah, right. Also, it's just impossible to say with the data that we have because they've never
Oh wait,
played
sorry. Do you mean Icy's in general or at the Ditto?
in the Ditto. Yeah, Icy players in the Ditto. I would say those are the two best players in the Ditto right now.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree.
So that's definitely a tough draw for Pudgy Panda. But yeah, I mean he came to, was it a Spectrum? It was some New Jersey local that he
Hmm.
hadn't been to in forever.
Hmm.
And they, one of those things where they don't know how to seed him, and he ends up winning.
Oh wow.
But I don't know if he had actually ended up getting any top 100 wins there. I think it was all
Mhm.
just people on the cusp of top 100.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Okay, it does look like he beat Chillin' Dude to make it out of his round one pool.
Yeah. So
Which,
we joked about how
even though Chillin' is a little bit rusty, he's one of the best players against Icy's for his skill level, like
yeah.
relative to his skill level. So I would say that's a feat on its own. I don't know if it counts for anything like like stats wise, but
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's more impressive, like in game than it might be out of game.
yeah,
It's the same thing you talked about, like being able to take into matchups into account when like looking
right,
at rankings.
right,
How like you kind of have to say, well, I don't know how impressive it is that Army beat Axe, but you have to give it to him, right?
right, yeah.
So it's kind of a similar thing with that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he doesn't make top 100, which is likely. It's possible that he could make top 100, but as it looks
Hmm.
right now, it's pretty likely that he might not. I think that's
Right.
the best win that anyone's had in like the top 100 era and not gotten ranked.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We saw Reeve get like 101 the year he beat
Oh, when he
SFAT.
beat SFAT,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but
So
Axe is number 3,
Axis
right?
3,
SFAT is
yeah,
like borderline 10 every year.
yeah.
Probably that year too, or at least like somewhere between 7 and 11. But I feel like at that level, like in the top 10, each step up is like such a big difference. Like each
Oh,
individual
for
number.
sure.
So beating number 3 is like huge compared to beating number 11 or 7 or whatever.
Yeah. So we'll see whether or not he kind of breaks the record, I guess. Is it calling
Yeah.
breaking the record if it's sad? If it's a bad record that you don't want to break?
Aw.
Is it still
Well,
breaking the record?
at least it'll make him unique, something to
True.
make people know about. Do you think that best of threes count for a different amount than best of fives in
See,
cases like this?
that's interesting. Yeah. So there was a time where I know Practical Task and I were talking about the idea of an algorithmic ranking in Melee, kind of similar to the ones
Mm-hmm.
that they use for PGR.
Mm-hmm.
Just like talking in a broad sense about like the logistics involving it, and I was pretty against it because I think it's really interesting to me how the whole thing works of like saying, oh, if you beat whatever, if you beat Axe at SmashCon, it counts for this many more times than if you beat him at uh, you know the gang or something like that, some small event.
Yeah.
So it like
Right.
for something that people might not take into account that much, it does have to like actually give a value to
Mm-hmm.
how much more that matters. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that does. I think the algorithm maybe in some way does make best of fives count more.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting. Yeah, I think I am more impressed if it's a best of five for sure. But I don't know if I like necessarily knock points off for it being best of three.
Right. Because I feel like most of the bigger upsets were that single round, right? Like the first round of round two pools.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
where SFAT lost. No, no, not even. No, I'm
No,
wrong. SFAT lost in
SFAT
winners
lost.
finals
He lost in
of round
round
one pools.
two. I think it was
Did he?
whatever it was best of three.
Best of three, right?
Yeah, so the point still stands of it being best of three.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the more interesting
Oh
things.
yeah, it was round one of round two pools. That's where it feels like a lot of the big upsets happened.
Yeah. So does best of three tournament mean there's more upsets? I don't know. That's something. Something luckily we don't really get to see. We don't get to see a lot of best of
Mm-hmm.
three like sets between some real heavy hitters.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question. The way I look at that is, it's kind of like you have these tournaments where someone gets an upset on a top player, maybe at a smaller event, and then they get like 6-0'd in crayons or something like that.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is, it's a positive for the player who does it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not a negative for the person who loses.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah, we
like,
like to use the word or the term win cancel if you like destroy someone in the run back or like beat them in two sets in grands.
yeah, yeah. So like a good example of this that is on everyone's mind probably is like Albert beating Hungrybox is so incredibly impressive to me.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter to me that he ends up losing the next set that they play. But also, I think that goes for HBox. Is it
Mm-hmm.
such a big detriment if he was ending up winning the next one? Um, I think
Right.
it's,
Especially in losers,
yeah.
because if anything, that counts for more because you're knocking one out of the tournament.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this actually. I even like suggested one time that like prize differential should be changed based on if like first place wins from winners versus losers.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
wow, that's wild.
yeah, I think if because it like incentivizes to not drop a set in winners because it's at the moment it seems like it's weighted differently to lose in winners versus to lose in losers.
Yeah.
So like I think you should get less of the prize pot if you lose a set but still win the tournament compared to not losing a set in general. We don't have to get into this. This is just my fun theory crafting, but I do feel like there is a difference in weighting between winning and winners and losers.
Interesting. Yeah, I would say like losing without dropping a set is more impressive than losing with dropping a set for sure. But the
Right.
money thing, ooh, this is interesting. This is up there with your better peach theory.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of weird theories,
You
but
got a lot
it's
of weird
okay.
theories. No, it keeps me on the edge of my seat. They're good. They're good. So speaking of winning through winners, we
Mhm.
saw one of the most dominant grand finals, winners finals, in a little bit of something of this caliber.
Super decisive.
We saw Leffen 6-0 Hungry Box to take the tournament.
Yeah,
Leffen
can't
not
even think of the last time that's happened.
I You got me. I know that people have said last year Hungry Box lost to Armada 3-0 and then dropped
Mhm.
down and lost to Mewtwo King 3-0 in losers finals, I believe.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, there's definitely like, if you really want to be like a hard nose about it and say like, when was the last time HBox got 6-0'd? It's
Right.
something there. I think someone on Reddit said it was 2009 or something, like
Jeez.
something crazy. Which of course that's kind of a weird
Yeah.
stat, because if you lose so much in winners finals, like there's a chance that
You're probably
you
gonna lose
aren't
in
playing as
losers
well.
finals too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But regardless of like that stat,
Hmm.
seeing Leffen play this well, man, that was something else.
Yeah. And it's crazy because Leffen was competing in multiple events
Yeah,
this weekend, different games. That's so incredibly difficult to switch between those two games.
yeah. I mean that's been the Leffen special for the past year or so. I mean, we
Yeah, I guess
saw
so.
him in 2018. He did so well in Dragon Ball Fighters.
Hmm.
He was, anywhere from top 15 to top 25, depending on how often he played.
Hmm.
And we see him in Ultimate. He beats Salem. He beats Meister, who ends up getting top 8.
Yeah.
That's dude's crazy.
Maybe it gives him a buff against Jigglypuff because Puff is kind of like an ultimate character, right?
I
Almost the
mean,
same thing as Wario.
yeah, right. That's what people were saying at Gommel when he came back from playing a bunch of Ultimate to 3-0 H box, and
Uh-huh.
then like got decisively 3-0'd by Manga.
Yeah. Because Mango is not an ultimate player.
Yeah,
It doesn't really translate.
yeah. That Falco's not an Ultimate. There is a Falco in Ultimate, but it's not that one.
Oh, it's
Um,
so different.
but yeah, Leffen, this tournament is really just incredibly impressive. And I think the thing about, yeah, he got 2 floaties in top 8.
Hmm.
Any thoughts about playing him,
Um,
or is it just kind of a man on a mission? Not too many
yeah,
thoughts
I
to
don't
go
know.
into it.
It's so I've only played him once before, and this was a few. So I'm not sure how he compared this time versus how he's performed in the past. I do know that like his style against floaties is a lot more um, like stage control heavy. Like he's not the kind of person, at least against Peach, to just sit in the corner and shoot lasers. He's more, let me just shut down your space, not give you the chance to like maneuver around my lasers, and instead suffocate you. And then once I get my single opening, I'll kill you off of it. So it's like very different from a lot of other Fox players,
Hmm.
and I'm sure like the same kind of energy applies to the Puff matchup, where yeah, you can shoot lasers all you want, but Puff only needs that like one opening to get a kill off of you. So if you're putting yourself in the corner, then if anything, sometimes make it easier for Puff to find that one opening. But if you exert a lot more like stage control and like physical pressure, like Leffen did against me, then you don't really offer them a chance to break through your pressure, and so you'll find a lot more success. So I think I think he was just really true to his game, and it showed off.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that versus HBox as well. I would say maybe not to the same
Mhm.
extent, but the way he was playing, definitely seemed different than. You're right. We do see a lot of laser heavy foxes, foxes who think that
Mhm.
that's the game plan that you have to go into,
Mhm.
and not to say that he doesn't use lasers, but
Right.
it is definitely in a way
Yeah,
where
he'll more use lasers as like pressure rather than
hmm
damage.
yeah, I mean the way he was attacking Hungrybox is just like no fear,
Yeah.
which
Oh
is
yeah.
which is crazy. We don't usually see foxes go into playing Hungrybox like that.
Yeah.
I
Normally
remember,
everyone's so afraid.
yeah, I got like a similar feeling. Obviously, this is a different thing completely, but I remember watching Moki at Gommel, just
Mhm.
like this new Fox player who hadn't played Hungrybox before ever, I think,
Right.
or if he did, was not at the same level, and was just
Mhm.
going in like crazy.
Yeah, it's it's a treat to watch because you normally see people crumble under the pressure that HBox provides.
Yeah. So it was sick to see Leffen do so well. I think when he's on point, you could say this about any of the top 5 probably,
Mhm.
but when Leffen's on point, he's a complete joy to watch.
Yeah.
So I think this brings us to a good question: Is Leffen winning this event? I believe this makes him like 4-1 with HBox on the year.
Mhm.
Uh, what do we say of his year? I mean, I think the top 3 is Hungrybox, Wizrobe, Leffen. As far as the
Mhm.
order goes, this is like the type of thing where you flip a coin or whatever, 3 coins or however you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think any way of
So
positioning that.
so Wizrobe is positive on everyone except for Axe and
Yes.
S2J, right?
Yeah, so Wizzy he's 3-0 with HBox, 2-0 with Leffen. He's lost to
One and
Plop.
three against Axe.
Yeah, 1-3 against Axe. He's never played Mango yet, which I think is a good thing for Wizzy right now.
Good thing for him, absolutely.
Yeah, but he also has losses that HBox and Leffen don't have. He lost to
Right.
SUJ, like you said. He lost to Gatsu.
Uh-huh.
And then we see HBox, who has all these really solid performances, of course. He's won Genesis, he won Pound and
Mm-hmm.
CEO and Low Tier City. But he's
Mm-hmm.
also, he's 1-3 with Wizzy. He's 1-4 with Leffen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Lost twice to
He lost to
Zane.
Amsa? When
Lost
did
to
that happen?
Amsa. That happened at Summit.
Oh wow. Completely
Yeah,
forgot about
he
that.
lost to Amsa. He lost to IBDW. He had that Albert
Uh-huh.
loss, which
Yeah.
I don't think is a make or break right now for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, you would consider that the same tier as like a Gatsu lost, right?
I
Kind.
mean, right now I think Albert's like a top 30 to 40 player.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly, we're going to see him at Shine.
Right.
That could change it to being a top 20 to 30 player.
Right.
Yeah, like right now, if I'm putting HBox at number 1, it's like I don't really care about the Albert win. If I'm putting him at number 2 or 3, I don't think the Albert
Mm-hmm.
win's the thing that does it.
Right.
Like if I'm putting him at 2 or 3, like it's not solely because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see a little
But
more
at least
losses
shows
from
that he's
him.
vulnerable,
Oh, for
right?
sure, yeah.
I think that's
Uh,
important when thinking about this. It's like who who can potentially lose to people outside of their tier.
hmm Yeah, if you're gonna use his major wins, if you're gonna talk about how he got first at so many tournaments, I think it's also important to say like, it's possible to see that on a way to first in the tournament or his
Yeah, that's
path
true. That's
that
true.
there might be people who are a little tougher.
Right. But he can
Uh,
still pull through and win the whole thing in the end.
yeah, so I think it's really interesting to look at these 3 players because Leffen and Wizzy we've seen way less than Hungrybox, but if you just look at how they do against the top tier players,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of crazy to say that HBox probably does the worst versus them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
their sets records are so skewed.
yeah,
Not so skewed, but skewed.
yeah.
One
um,
and three and one and four.
yeah, so I've said this about Leffen. I'm a big Leffen believer. I've said this on the podcast before. He's 1-2
Mm-hmm.
with Axe right now. I
Yeah.
don't know how long that's gonna last. Like he's lost to Axe before, but he's
Mm-hmm.
been so solid in the matchup.
Right.
Where if you were to give them, if you have them both play at the highest level they play at, I would
Mm-hmm.
favor Leffen.
Right.
It's all about, I guess, like how often can they play at that high level.
Yeah. And which Pikachu players are available for Leffen
Which
to warm up
Pikachu
against?
players? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who wants
So,
to net play in?
well, who was it who prepped him for their first Summit set? Because I don't know if you remember, they played in, I think it was Swiss pools, and he 3-0'd them.
I don't know. Were there any other Pikachus?
I guess we'll never know. I just need to get invited to Summit. Slime.
Yeah. Oh no,
Uh,
didn't he net played against Nez that one time he had to play against
He did
Amsa.
net. Well, like who did he net play against? Eri
Yeah,
from
it was Nez
SoCal.
Mod God.
Yeah, no, it was for AMSA, but like,
Oh, for Pikachu? I don't
yeah,
know. I
who
don't know who's there.
would?
Gotta find someone.
Yeah. Regardless, though, like I think his set versus Axe, it doesn't look great, but in the
Mm-hmm.
future, I think it could change. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel the same for Wizzy. I think Wizzy. It's crazy to say in 2019 that Wizzy is Leffen's demon, but that's the truth right now.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that's shocking to think about.
If there's one person you don't want to see in Levin's bracket, if you're a Leffen fan, it's
That's what it's
crazy that it's Wizzy.
I guess so. Yeah, not even Zane. He's undefeated against Zane this year.
Yeah, he's done pretty well against Zane. He's 4-stocked him that one time.
Yeah.
In the fun triad of it was Mango 4-stocking Leffen, and then the next tournament was Leffen 4-stocking Zane, and then a
Mm-hmm.
tournament or two later it was Zane 4-stocking H-Bucks. So very fun.
Uh-huh.
But let's just get down to brass tacks here. What would you say is the ranking of the top 3 right now? Obviously, we're going to have Shine. We're going to have Big House and Main Stage. We're going to have other events where we're going to probably see these players. But as of August 2019, what is the lloD rank? Now, I'm putting you on the spot here because I don't have a definitive ranking. So it's going to give me some time.
Okay, I would say Leffen first.
Mm-hmm.
Second, H-Box. Third, Wizrobe.
Ooh. That's a... I think Wizzy's performances are so solid, but I think him at third is... I mean, everything's justifiable at like this time in the year, looking at what we have. I would probably say... Oh, boy. Okay, so let's say they're all attending a tournament tomorrow, and there needs to be seeding. I would say Leffen, Wizzy, H-Box. But...
Like who's first between them?
I would say, no, Leffen, Wizzy, then H-Box. That would be my top 3.
Leffen, Wizzy, H-Box.
That would be
I could see that.
But
yeah, the reason why I give H-Box number 2 is because of his abundance of placements. Like he just has so much more data against like the top 10, and it really shows that he just beats them all.
Yeah.
Vast majority of the time, except for Wizrobe and Leffen.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, if I had to seed a tournament tomorrow, that's how I'm doing it. But if there was a ranking, like the ranking period ended today, that's so tough. I think you're right. H-Box has proven that he's got a lot of data that proves that he can come in and play these players and do really well. That's tough.
Right, because it's like the 5-0 versus S2J, the 5-0 versus Plup.
Yeah.
4-0 versus SFAT. It's like, yeah, Wizrobe has like a lot of 1-0s and 2-0s, but he's 1-1 against Plup. He's 0-1 against S2J. It's just like it seems a lot of them are on the edge.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't really prove that he's like definitively outside of that like 4 to 10 tier or whatever it is. Like the rest of the top 10.
All right, here's what I'm going to say about it. I'm going to kind of hedge my bets. I'm going to say I already gave my seeding for the potential major of tomorrow.
Yep.
At the end of the year, I would say with a full year's worth of results, if we're to continue like this, I would say Leffen, H-Box, Wizzy. I think Wizzy, without having played Mango, we said that. I think that's a good thing for him right now to not play Mango. I think Mango's possibly the scariest player for Wizzy in bracket.
Yeah.
I think him doing well versus
people say Mango is like the best player versus Falcon in the world.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen him lose to Falcon like when he's going his main characters in Jesus, I don't even know how long. I couldn't even I'd be racking my brain to try to think of a time when he lost when going try hard. So I think that's scary for him. It's not impossible for Wizzy, of course. Wizzy's done so well.
Right.
But something where I think that could be scary. Although he won last time they played versus Plup, I think Plup's still someone who, if he's in Wizzy's bracket, I think that's kind of scary for him. And then the S2J and Gatsu losses, I would say probably not going to be a huge thing to Wizzy in the future.
Right.
But, they're there. That's definitely something that would keep me from being extremely confident and saying that they're the best player in the world.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, Leffen right now, he's looking good versus H-Box. He's got some... got a loss to Mango, 2 to Axe, 2 to Wizzy, but I feel confident that any of those could change given time.
Right.
So that's my call for that, I would say, at the end of the year. Got Big Left number 1.
All right. It's a bold claim, but I definitely see it happen.
We're the people, bold claims. We make all the... Why make a claim if it's not going to be bold?
So you don't... Okay, do you think anyone else outside of the top 3 is going to have a claim for number 1 by the end? Is it possible at this point?
I think it's possible. I think without having... Okay, so no Evo, no Summit, and no Don't Park. Even though Don't Park wasn't a thing that was attended by a ton of of that tier of players, I still think not having any of those 3 is really hard for any player to make a huge, add a bunch of people, good wins to their resume.
Right. Because you kind of need all of them there
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
make a kind of like claim. Like you need like Axe to be able to beat Wizzy once and HBox twice or something.
Yeah. So like Axe is obviously the person who does, if he does well at main stage and
Mm-hmm.
big house, and maybe there's, I don't know if anything else, but maybe because of kind of the lack of huge things, maybe there's something that was smaller that might be bigger. I'm not like, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
anything that I'm alluding to. Um,
Smash Camp, maybe.
yeah, I mean, we're seeing, I think Zane and Axe and Amsa might be going there, so definitely
Mm-hmm.
possible to have kind of someone in that lower range of like 4 to 10 might kind of prove themselves.
Right.
But yeah, like obviously, you could say, well, it's possible that if like Albert wins Shine and Big House, like like
Yeah.
if he wins every tournament,
What a world. Just because
yeah,
you don't have any of those losses, right? You would have so little data.
yeah, like so obviously like it's possible for a person to win literally every single tournament that there's left in the year. But as far as like who I think actually has a chance, yeah, I think it's those three, and then maybe like very slim results for Axe, Mango, or
Right.
Zane if they
Mm-hmm.
just really kind of sweep the rest of the tournaments.
Right.
So I know we kind of went a little bit away from SmashCon. Is there anything else you want to talk about specifically about SmashCon before we move on?
Um, let's see.
I think we really hit on most of the big stuff.
Yeah, it's just kind of proving that ice climbers with wobbling legal are always a threat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll see later this year at the Big House. The Big House has wobbling banned this year.
Yeah.
One of the last majors to unban it. It's now one of the first majors to ban it again.
Yeah, that's funny.
But I think one of the things about when it was banned was you would always see Nintendo still doing well.
He's good.
He's good, so we
Yeah,
might. Yeah,
I always used to think he was one of the most intelligent neutralized IC's players to play against.
interesting. Yeah, so he's definitely. Yeah, you're right about that. I think he's definitely a really smart player. It's
Mm.
interesting to see whether or not the crop of IC's talent we have coming up right now will be doing well in a
Mm-hmm.
major without wobbling.
Right.
Bananas is obviously super good, but we've seen him kind of struggle a little bit in region when his
Yeah.
region banned wobbling.
Right.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But that's a ways away.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, though, I want to ask you a little bit about what the rest of your year's looking like. So I know you're going to Shine. Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything else in 2019? This has been a pretty quiet year from you,
Right.
for a couple
I'm
different
hoping to
reasons.
go to Big House
Mm-hmm.
also. I would kind of have to like sneak in there like I did last year because I know they only do, or they mostly do. I think they only do round one pools on the Friday of the weekend, and it's tough for me to take any days off. So I'd have to like fly in as soon as my class ends and
Oh boy.
try to like sneak into the last pool. But I'll try to go to Big House. Otherwise, nothing else is confirmed yet besides Shine and Big House. So hopefully it'll be enough to take out my inactive status, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be 4 majors if you were to go to Big House. I don't see why
Yeah,
not. Now,
yeah, it should be fun.
I've got a
I'm excited to like compete again because even though I haven't been competing too much in the past like 8 months, I actually do feel I have gotten better. It's weird to think about, but
huh.
there's just so many like new things I've added to my game plan that I'm excited to show off.
Well, that's super sick. Really, definitely looking forward to a new and improved lloD.
Yeah,
lloD 2.0.
yeah.
Um,
So very excited to compete again.
yeah. Speaking of if you're active, I got
Mm-hmm.
There's a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, as it stands right now, where do you think you would be ranked? And then where do you think you are in skill level? I know this is kind of a loaded question, but
Mm-hmm.
interesting to think of what your thoughts on this might be.
Um, I think I'd be kind of like the same place I've been, maybe up like 2 or 3 spots. So
Mm-hmm.
I was ranked 21st
I think
last
you were
summer.
21 on the summer, and
and
then
21st
21st. Yeah.
for all of 2018. So I think I'm like still kind of in that range. Maybe moved up to like 19 or 18 or something. I do know like the most recent rankings, there were a lot of newcomers to the top
Hmm.
like 10 to 20 range. So that does kind of throw off my relative perception of skill. Because a lot of those people were like in the like 30s before, 20s and 30s. So there's been a lot of shifting around. And
Yeah.
then also some other people becoming inactive too. Um,
Yeah. I mean, we really haven't
so,
seen like you. I don't want to say your peak because that implies
mhm,
that that was in the past, but
mhm,
when you were performing more at majors, yeah, when we saw you playing like even bigger Belk and around that time,
right.
like top eight at
Yeah, that was
CDL.
before school started for me. So I literally was just playing Smash full time for a couple months, and
Yeah, but I think
that
you're.
was like
Oh, sorry, go on.
that was probably that was definitely when I got the most exposure and when I had the most um I don't know what the word is, the most like capability relative to my skill range.
Yeah,
Like
interesting.
the if that makes sense, like the closest to my peak of that era. Whereas right now it feels like my
You're.
range has gotten
Yeah.
higher, but my average performance has gotten lower. I don't know what I'm saying
No, that
anymore.
definitely makes sense. So
I'm like
you're.
not as close to my peak as I was back then,
Yeah, your peak may be
and I don't know
higher
how that
now, though.
relative.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, peak is higher, but I'm not like as close to my potential relatively.
No, that makes
Just because
sense.
I'm not competing every week, I'm not grinding, I'm not practicing every day like I was back then. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell. I could even see like looking over matches this past weekend. I made so many technical flubs that I wouldn't have made last year. Simple things like wave dashes
Oh boy.
and like shield drops and things that you can't really miss when you're playing against a top 10 player. Um,
Yeah.
but I do feel like my understanding of the game has gotten a lot better, even if I can't execute it. So it's a little bit weird spot for me right now.
No, that's. I mean, I think it's. I think you're right. In a sense about that, but I want to go back to something you said about like this new crop of players that has kind of shown up because I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really interesting how when you were playing at that level back
Mm-hmm.
then when your exposure was highest,
Mm-hmm.
we really didn't see you overlapping with a lot of the people who we then would come to know as these top players.
Right.
So like, I mean, obviously these players
Yeah.
were all good, but like you never were really playing when IBW was a top 10 player or
Yeah. Exactly.
Bananas. You know, he had his whole thing started at Big House last year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's just a ton of these players who like Trif. I think is a good example. The
Right.
players really just like rocketed up.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of them I had played before their ascent to
Yeah,
top 20 status. Like I played Ginger, I played Face Roll, um, but yeah, most of them I never really got a chance to play, especially after they established as like these national threats. So I love to prove to them that I can still dance with them at the very top. So
oh for sure. I mean, I'm sure people would love to see it. Speaking of Trif, so actually we
hmm
have just a few questions from the Patreon, a little
Sure.
bit that we actually already went over.
Uh-huh.
Um, by the way, patreon.com/melee stats. So we had a few questions for the Patreon. We already went over your
Okay.
kind of future in competing for this year.
hmm
Actually, a little addendum to that is going into next year. Is there any? Do you see yourself competing as well? I know that you are. Is it medical school? Is that what's going on
Yeah,
right now?
medical school, right.
Yeah, that.
So our like huge test is coming up next spring. Um, but after that, who knows, honestly. I think it depends month to month because the way medical school works is like the first 2 years is like classroom settings, and then the next 2 years are hospital settings. So during rotations is what it's called after the big board exam. I think depending on location and which rotation I'm doing, I could have either no time at all or like a ton of time to play. So I think it'll be like a month by month. Sometimes I'll be able to travel to everything. Sometimes I'll be able to go to nothing.
Gotcha.
Uh,
So melee's not dropped by any means. It's just purely
right.
based upon schedule. All right.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a cool thing to hear. You know, hopefully we get to see a little more of you, but I mean, I always say that whenever someone stops playing Smash, whether because of their choice or
Mhm.
because of extenuating circumstances, I never really get mad. I mean, like
Yeah, no one has any obligation is to keep playing, but
yeah,
I also
and
don't think anyone ever really quits Melee.
we've seen a few. Unfortunately, I think it's the people who I don't want to quit, right? The Silent Wolves
Yeah,
and the Drugged Foxes of the
right.
world. Um,
They'll come back.
they'll come
You always know
back.
they'll come back eventually. Look at PPMD.
Look
He's
at
back,
hey, yeah, look at
kind of.
PPMD. Yeah, eventually.
Eventually, he's one day.
We talked about it. This is actually really funny that you bring this up. This was one of the first running jokes in Melee Stats way back when we started in 2016 as just a group
Mhm.
of people talking about Melee. We talked in 2016. I talked about how PPMD, if he came back, would get blown up because he would lose to lloD. Now in 2016, I think you were what in the 50s or something like that. This was
Yep,
this was
that's funny.
some call that was kind of out of nowhere. And then the same thing happened in 2017 around CEO Dreamland when people were talking about how good Plups Luigi would be, and I said
Uh,
Plups Luigi wouldn't beat lloD.
yep, yeah,
This was
yeah, that's funny.
again
And like
like a
that's funny. I remember Taffa one time was thinking. I think he was asked sometime last year how where PPMD would be ranked if he were to come back like that day, and Taffa was like he'd be ranked the spot below lloD. It's just like I don't know
uh,
why that relationship keeps being
that's
brought
beautiful.
up because I don't think I've ever talked to PPMD honestly.
Well,
Probably have
who
before
knows?
this time.
Maybe next major he attends, we'll rig it.
Just so we can play.
We'll rig
Yeah.
it. Um, Man, I was thinking of something before and we kind of got sidetracked. But yeah, anytime someone is taken away from Melee, it's usually for good things, so I can't really be mad. As much as
Right.
I'd like to see you play, obviously, congrats on doing well in medical school and whatever
Thank you.
future
Thank
that might
you.
bring you to. But I do have a question from Patreon. Another one. It's
Okay.
about so what are your thoughts on Trif right now? So Trif is the highest ranked Peach right
Uh
now.
huh.
Is just ranked 12th. Definitely someone who was around your level in a kind of a general sense. Obviously, he was
Hmm.
ranked lower than you. I
Hmm.
think on like every single ranking you were both on, except for
Hmm.
maybe one. What are your thoughts on him right now? He's kind of really blown up in the past few months.
Right. Yeah. Trif has what is he ranked right now? 12th?
12th, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he kind of came out of nowhere um, with this sudden burst of being able to compete with all these top players. Because beforehand, he would do well, but he just either wouldn't travel enough or would like only play against people that like that beating them didn't really count for too much to have him propel that high upwards in the rankings. Finally, he has all these chances to compete with all these top players, and he's showing that he can compete with all of them, which is great. Like a lot of his big wins are, I know especially he's good against Fox. I
Mhm.
think that is like a huge bonus for him, just because of how many Foxes he gets to play against. Um,
A running joke that the Melee Stats crew who was at Genesis had
mhm.
was that Trip's most impressive win at Genesis was not Mutaking, but it was 3-0ing Fat Goku.
Oh, absolutely, because Fat Goku's so good against
Fat Goku's
Peach.
so good against Peach.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
Trif, like, I really like. There's this one thing he does. I call it the Trif float because I definitely stole it and started using it, where he like full hops backwards and then double jumps forwards into float and then a falling float canceled forward air or nair. Just like that entire motion, I think perfectly describes Trif's playstyle because it's all about like baiting them into moving forward with his full hop back
yeah.
and then punishing their attempt to take space with his aggressive aerial afterwards. So that's very different from anything else that any Peach player has done before. Because, like, for example, Armada's signature movement option, in my opinion, which I call the Armada float, is full hopping forward and then double jumping back. But Trip kind of reverses that to
Yeah.
like push people into the corner and find these openings that no one else has really been able to do. And then once Trif gets that opening, especially on Fox, he kills them.
Yeah, he seems so. I think the term aggressive might be a little reductive in a sense because it doesn't really
Mhm.
tell the whole story.
Right.
But I think compared to the peaches that we've seen on his level, I think he does seem more aggressive.
Right.
The way he's able to, you're right, like play around with that movement. I think his up airs are really good as well. You know,
Yep.
he does like a great job just calling out any approaches
Mhm.
with that. I think he's super
Mhm.
solid in that, and it might be a reason why we saw him. It was last week at Fate. He actually was double eliminated by Sechi. So
Fit. How do I say it? Oh yeah, yeah, and well, it's a bad matchup for Trif. Let's say he's
yeah,
kind of bad against Falcon. That's a tough one to be good at. Because as good as the Trif float is, it's like the worst thing in the world against Falcon.
yeah.
So,
So definitely interesting to talk about like how you perceive his playstyle. Um,
mhm,
like, what do you think? I guess this is tough for you. You know, you're kind of a humble person, but like, do you think that there's
mhm.
something that you do better than him, or something that he does better? Like, if you had to create some sort of Frankenstein's monster of the two of your play styles, like, what do you think would be from you, and what do you think would be from him?
It's definitely my defensive options and his offensive options. Because I think my defensive game is a lot stronger. Like I'm a lot better at like counter hits and sometimes trades and like micro spacing, but he's a lot better at like overshoots and catching people's movements. Um, his punish game is stronger against fast fallers. Mine is stronger against floaties and midway. I think same thing. His edge guards are better against fast fallers. Mine are better against floaties and midweights. Um, so like a lot of it is just matchup dependent, I would say.
So the best combination would just be like swapping you two out per matchup.
Yeah. And a lot of it is like the attributes that I mentioned because you need like aggressive stances to beat spacies,
Hmm.
but that doesn't work against like Puff or Falcon is kind of an anomaly. I think I'm much better at the Falcon matchup, but that's just because uh, Trif doesn't really know how to do those like low float up airs to beat Falcon's. He doesn't know how to challenge Falcon's Nair,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much all Sechi did. And this set was just spam shuffle of Nair, and Trif didn't really have an answer to that. Um, so it is kind of, even though we both do play the same color, and a lot of people described us as having similar play styles previously, I do think we do play pretty differently, especially once you bring matchups into account. It's funny because like my brother once described it really well. He says that Trip's play style is like peach with an exclamation mark, and then mine is like peach with a question mark. So that's like the big difference between us two, which I think is pretty fitting.
Definitely seems like a Rishi way to describe something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. I think that these are probably things that might go unnoticed to
Mhm.
some people.
Oh yeah,
Um,
most people just think that we all just down smash, and
yeah,
that's it.
right.
Oh,
So,
Trip's a lot better at using down smash than I am. I'll give him that.
well, your down smash. I mean, people will say that your down smash won you the set versus S2J at Holiday Bash, right? Wasn't that when you
Oh yeah,
you got
that was
knocked
the
off
one
stage?
time. The one time I turned my brain off. No,
Hey,
that's like a I wouldn't say like a common thing, but that's a cheeky thing you can do to people trying to from from ledge.
yeah.
Marths love to like short hop, or Marths love to short hop or ledge hop Nair, like past Peach, and you can actually crouch cancel the first hit and down smash this before the second one comes out. Because by that time you'll have moves past you, but the down smash sends them back off without a double jump. So I thought that it would work against Falcon too, and actually it did. So ended up working out.
I mean, yeah, you ended up winning the set, so of course it worked out.
Right, but
Speaking of,
Trips down smash are better like on shield. He gets them working on shield a lot better than I do. But all right, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, speaking of Marth, we
Mm-hmm.
actually, if you look into the resume that you
Mm-hmm.
two have had this year, it's actually
Mm-hmm.
starts to be pretty similar. Obviously, there is definitely stuff where it's different, but
Mm-hmm.
I think Triff's best wins, he's got that win on Zane at Summit. He's got two wins on
Mm-hmm.
AMSA at Phoenix Blue. If we look
Mm-hmm.
over to you, depends on whether or not people think locals count, but you do have a set on Zane, and you do have two
Yeah.
sets on AMSA.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that is funny.
Kind of interesting to see the parallels. He also, I think he beat Cody, which is really good. He beat IBW. That's super
Big win.
solid.
Yeah.
Beating Moki, beating like just doing really well against Spacies, of course. Super solid. But it is interesting to see how kind of his like marquee wins are something that now, aren't too far off from the best things on your resume for 2019.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
definitely
comparing us
something.
is hard, especially in the past, because we've never really had the same like pool of players to compete against. But this year, now that he's traveling more, I think it'll be a lot easier to compare my record against his.
Yeah, it's really cool to see if you're able to go to Shine and you're able to go to Big House, kind of see what that will be like. Unfortunately, we're always going to live in a Melee society where people love to compare like characters, even if they play completely differently. People love to say, "Who's the best Peach?"
Yeah.
So it'll actually
Especially now
be
that Armada's
cool.
gone.
Yeah, right. It'll be cool to see like actually having enough data to have that conversation.
Right.
I think that's basically it. We had a couple different Patreon questions, but that was mainly it. You know what? I'll shout out one of my favorite patrons, which is Michael Weber, aka Webs. Kind of a cheeky question, but yeah, decided to give him a shout out on stream. He asked if you're tired about commentators talking about how Peach's whole game plan versus Marth is to find space to pull turnips.
Yeah, so the commentary this past weekend I thought was actually good when talking about that kind of thing, because I think DJ was the one that brought it up. Like against Zane specifically, it's funny because you don't need to find space to pull turnips because he gives you the space. He'll like be right in your face, but then he's gonna dash back, so it's like the perfect time to pull turnips. So. I think it was a nice change, at least temporary. We'll see if people keep up the conversation and noticing the differences. Oh man, I have so many complaints about commentators in general, but that fortunately is not one of them. I think that's okay. That's an okay statement to make.
There's been a long planned deep dive, Melee Stats deep dive episode, which could very likely never happen to like talk about commentary.
Oh boy.
I think that there's a couple different reasons why it'll never happen. One of which is like burning the bridge with most people in the community.
Oh, absolutely. Because the people who commentate are the ones with the most connections these days. So
yeah,
that really can't really say
I think that was planned and maybe not thought through, but who knows? Maybe we'll see that one day. Well, I think this is basically it. We had a good conversation about SmashCon, maybe what number one looks like. We talked about a couple of people who might find their way in the top 100, and just learn more about what lloD is up to in 2019 and the future, which I think is something that, especially after seeing this top 8, something on a lot of people's minds. So thank you so much for being on. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up before we get going?
I think that's it.
All right. So
one more thing.
Yes.
I think we might have finally, for the first time ever, a Daisy player in the top 100.
Mog?
Yeah.
I
think he's gonna make it?
Mog is so. I think there's a lot of MDVA players who are in a similar stance of just like having really good wins, and also just because. Well, it's not even terrible. It's just like they're in a good region where. I think Bob-omb is a good example because he beat Jerry at the same tournament he lost to Busy Boy.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, I don't think that personally losing to Busy Boy is an incredibly bad loss, but it's just like they have so many people who fall under the radar where if you're looking at the average panelist, the average panelist how many years ago put Zoo at 60 something when he like played 3 sets and lost 2 of them. Like the average panelist is definitely not indicative of the skill player of these people. I think Mog having, so what is it? It's Ginger, Army, and Magi.
Yep.
In addition to some like Kevin Maples.
Big wins.
Those are good. I think we could see it. I think the question is,
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that
go on.
Daisy might be top 100. We'll have to see.
I'm a fan of it.
Character diversity.
I don't play Daisy. I play Blue Peach.
Okay.
I play Green Peach.
Which Peach player or which Peach color should you play?
I did. I think I might have gotten White Peach.
All right.
I started as a White Peach. I went to Blue, and during the football season for the Philadelphia Eagles, I played Green Peach. But
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, hard to remember which peach I got.
Uh,
I think he's definitely someone who could find their way into top 100. I think there's also
yeah,
players who I'm sure they're going to get top 100 and then they get 102 or whatever.
yep.
So it's hard to say. I think, Bobby Big Balls or even someone like Lint last year, I think that
hmm
they did really well and didn't find their way in the top 100.
Yeah.
So hard to say in August who's going to make top 100, but Mog's solid.
Yeah, he's getting pretty good.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how he finds his way on. I still might make the bold claim that Iori from Tennessee is the best Daisy, but yeah.
Okay. He just has to travel more. Or
Yeah,
at least travel in general, like once. Just
yeah, that's never gonna
enter
happen.
something once.
That's never gonna happen. So maybe we'll see the first Daisy. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on. It's been a real pleasure to be able to
Oh,
talk to you. I said before we were recording that one of my favorite players to watch as a Peach fan myself, someone who I've always wanted to do well in bracket. So being able to talk to you at length about this, just been a complete joy.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And if people wanted to follow you on Twitter, I believe you are at lloD74,
Yep.
LLOD74. And then is that the same on Twitch as well?
Same on Twitch. Yep.
Are you still streaming Netplay? I've definitely watched a couple Netplay streams.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a big Netplay fiend while in school.
Awesome. So people can find you there, and
Mhm.
they can find what do you tweet? Some hot takes. I know there's
Hot
some
takes.
tier list hot takes. There's
Yep. Check out my
which
pinned tweet with my guide to improvement. If you want to get good
the
at
guy
Smash,
a
that should
classic
be your
LOD,
first step.
a classic LOD tweet. Who knows? Maybe there's going to be a new entrant into the which Katy Perry song are you? Maybe there's a new tweet in that one. There's some new Katy Perry songs that are coming out. So
Yeah, yeah.
who
I'm
knows?
always
But thank you.
thinking of a
Yeah.
Kelly Clarkson tier list right now.
Ooh.
That's on deck for a tweet this week.
Well,
We'll
you know what?
see.
Anyone who wants to see that first before anyone else, they can follow you at lloD74. And as far as the Melee stats, you can follow us at Melee Stats Pod. We're still going strong with our local tweets. So if you wanted to know what is happening at locals throughout the mostly the U.S., but of course we also talk about locals from other regions. We'll be tweeting that every day. You can keep up on what might have happened in these smaller locals that you might not be able to see on Twitch or might not have the time to catch up with. We talked about it before. The Melee Stats Patreon, so helpful to us. We reached the $100 threshold, so we are going to have a celebration stream sometime in the future. And we're pretty close to our next goal, which is having a podcast producer. So you should be hearing this once we hit 120. It'll be a little clearer, be a little less messy. It should be pretty good. And just really help support the content that we make, like deep dives, When's Melee, um, future content's planned, so we might see something from there. And of course, you can talk to us about Melee in the Melee Stats Podcast Discord server, which is going to be linked in the description. Thank you so much, lloD, for being on.
Yeah, thanks again.
And I will see you at Shine.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so time for us to be played out by the wonderful sounds of someone bursting back onto the surface from a deep dive.